Well, it doesn't happen often, but the bare minimum was actually achieved today. A UK journalist actually asked a Tory politician how their main manifesto policy is affecting the people of the UK. Now, of course, the bare minimum is not great, and we'll get to that, but it's interesting to see how even just a little bit of pressure can make these Tories squirm.
Has Brexit made us poorer?
No.
What, the OBRs that predict both exports and imports will be 50% lower in the long run than if the UK had remained in the EU. The Bank of England predicts the UK suffering loss of business investment worth 29 billion. I understand the arguments about autonomy, about democracy, but on has it made us poorer? You say no.
Now that's a good start. She even preempted his counter-arguments by moving the take back control discussion off the table. But unfortunately, it won't convince many of the Brexiteers watching at home because both of the statements she made included the word predicts. And suffice to say, if Brexiteers believed expert predictions, we wouldn't be here. The only benefit of Brexit actually going ahead is that we no longer need to rely exclusively on predictions in order to win these arguments. And even the sources that she quoted have said stuff about the damage that Brexit has already done. For example, the OBR saying that Brexit has reduced goods imports by 18%, or the Bank of England saying that Brexit has increased food prices by 6%. Because I use these expert predictions as well, but I regularly back them up with the damage that we can already see, and therefore Brexiteers can't argue against. For example, 1 in 5 small businesses that used to export to the EU now no longer can. The over 40,000 pigs that have had to be culled and burned because we can no longer get the butcher staff from the EU, or simply point to the fact that even our pro-Brexit Prime Minister has said that Brexit has damaged our trade.
I say no.
What's your evidence for that?
My evidence is that we are still a growing economy. We're doing really well.
Imagine boasting about the economy while the people of the UK are suffering the sharpest fall in living standards on record.
We've had
We're the only person in the country in the G7 to have a smaller economy than pre-pandemic.
Yeah, but it depends on which year you're measuring and where. Actually, I think people were predicting we were going into a recession.
It doesn't depend on what year you're measuring. If you look at our pre-pandemic economy size, we're the only country in the G7 to have a smaller one.
But people, I'm a great believer that this country has got a much better future, that we'll grow quicker having left the European Union. I believe, actually.
That man, just like so many Brexiteers, completely ran out of any argument to say that Brexit has not made us poorer, and so he went back to his old friend, blind belief. I believe Brexit will make us richer. I believe Brexit will encourage growth, even though all the evidence says the exact opposite. Tell me you've started a religion without telling me you've started a religion.
We're just about to prove that, and in Northern Ireland, we're going to prove it even more because of the deal that we've just struck under the Windsor framework.
You do realise that you just said that the economic success of Northern Ireland, which is in the EU single market, will be better than the economic success of England, Scotland and Wales, which aren't. Because is it now official Tory policy that being in the EU is better than being out of the EU, but you're just not allowed to come out and say it?
Now, I think it's very difficult to measure like with like because of a whole host of things that have happened since Brexit. There was absolutely a stutter after Brexit economically, but it's very difficult to measure that because COVID then came very quickly. The war in Ukraine came very quickly.
It's difficult for you to separate the damage of Brexit from the damage of COVID, but you're not an economist, my guy. The body of economists that the UK government uses to make their decisions, the Office of Budget Responsibility, they have made that separation, and they have said that the damage of Brexit long-term is worse than COVID. But it's not surprising that he would have a thing against academic expertise, given that he's the same MP who tried to draw up a list of the names of academics and professors who were teaching about Brexit and their syllabuses. And then his party introduced a free speech law for universities to address what they saw as a bias against things like Brexit. And the evidence they used was that 4 out of 10 Brexit-supporting students felt uncomfortable outing themselves in lectures. Now, for starters, 4 out of 10 is a minority. Second of all, if I did more damage to my economy than a planet-crippling pandemic, I'd probably keep quiet about that too. So Sophy Ridge did do a good job here, and that MP did squirm, but those screws could have been tightened a little bit more.